Hello and welcome back to PMP Educator Project Management Lecture Series. I was not able to post lectures recently because of some engagements I had, but I hope that I will continue this series this week. This is lecture number 4. I have 3 lectures already for Project Scope Management Series. This is before we go through the first process. I just want to go briefly with the processes involved in the scope management. And as we mentioned in the previous lecture, that there are 5 processes, and 3 of those are in the planning phase, and 2 of those are in the monitoring and control phase. So in this lecture, I will just go through the collect requirements process, which is in the planning phase, and the deliverable, the major deliverable or the key deliverable for this process is the requirements document. So collect requirements process has 2 inputs, 3 outputs, and it has several tools and techniques. There are actually 8 listed, but some techniques have some more information, so we will go through those in the next lectures. So basically, the first thing which we discuss in any process is the number of inputs. So the number of inputs when you are collecting requirement in the scope management group, then the first is the project charter, and the second one is the stakeholder register. Project charter, as I mentioned in the previous lectures, that it gives you an authority or the authority to the project manager to start the project, and it has some basic description of the project, and also some other information like the reason why we are starting it and stuff like those, and identification of the stakeholder, some very brief and basic information. And at this time, if you don't understand project charter, then I will recommend going back to the previous lectures and go through my previous lecture and get some more information about the project charter. The next thing which I will discuss in this lecture is stakeholder register, and then we will discuss the tools and techniques and outputs as we progress through this lecture series. Stakeholder register is a way to identify the information regarding the stakeholder. So you can have that register as a simple document where you put some information, or you can have an Excel sheet where you put where you have different columns and rows where you put information. But the whole idea is to identify the stakeholder. In the beginning, you want to identify your stakeholders in the planning phase, so that you have a good idea about what exactly you want to build and what user wants, or what the stakeholders are interested in. So the whole idea of a stakeholder register is to identify stakeholders with a particular interest in or impact on quality. So whether they are interested in having a feature, or they have some impact on the quality of the final product. Basically, a stakeholder, as I mentioned in the previous lectures, that a stakeholder has a positive influence and also a negative influence. For some project, the stakeholder, they want to have that project in order to succeed, but in some cases, a stakeholder, they don't want to get the project done, so they have a negative interest in that project. The 3 basic information which are needed in that register are identification information, and then assessment information and stakeholder classification. So think about, like, if you have a stakeholder, then you want to have a whole picture of that stakeholder. So first you want to know the name of the stakeholder, the position of that stakeholder in the organization, or if it's an external organization, then you also need to know what is the position of that stakeholder, the contact information of that stakeholder, so that you will need it in the future communication as we go through the next lecture series in the communication management. And also role in the project, whether the role of the role in the project of that stakeholder is how important. Then we have the assessment information, that what are the main requirements and expectation for that stakeholder, the potential influence of that stakeholder, interest in which phase of the project. Sometimes a stakeholder is more interested in the planning phase, and some stakeholders are involved when you are doing the quality assessment of your project. And finally, we have a stakeholder classification. We classify whether that stakeholder is internal, external, whether that stakeholder is a supporter or neutral, or a resistor. He doesn't want a negative stakeholder. He doesn't want to get the project done. And a supporter of the project, or the supporters, which is the stakeholder which is the supporter of that project, has the positive influence in the progress of the project. Some tools and techniques which we will go through. There are, as I mentioned, I think there are like 8 or more techniques, and we will go through these techniques, but I will briefly go through some techniques which are very simple. First is the interviews. When you are collecting requirements information, then you want to interview people so that you have information about what is the requirement or what exactly they want to have. Our interview can be a formal or informal, and it can be one-on-one or multiple. So you can have, like, you can interview each person individually, or you can interview multiple people all together and get the information about what are the requirements. Then we have the focus groups, which brings together pre-qualified stakeholders and subject matter expert. So the whole idea is to have the pre-qualified stakeholders. So it's a certain focused group. It's not like everybody is participating in it. And also you can say, like, those people are expert in that matter, a subject matter expert, which you bring together, and then there is a moderator which guides the discussion, and you get the information. The output of that session will give you a lot of information about what exactly they want, so that you can collect the requirements. Then there is another technique which is called observation, and it's basically you observe how they perform. So if you're developing something for a certain target audience or client, you want to know how do they perform the work, so that you can understand what their work is and what are the requirements. So it is also called job shadowing. So that means, like, somebody is shadowing the job of the person who he is observing. So it's basically somebody is looking at the worker who is performing the job. So he is basically shadowing him. It is basically done by the outsider by watching or doing himself. In some cases, as I mentioned, it is just watching, which is the shadowing part. But you have also the observer, which is also doing the same thing himself, so that just to get a feeling of how things are done. And in that case, it is called participant observer. The person who is doing it is the participant, and he is an observer too.